To start with, we are going to talk about intentional action. Now, intentional action are actions that are done with a purpose, with conscious thought, and driven by a specific goal or intention. For example, giving a compliment, helping a friend, or even expressing anger are examples of intentional action. And so now, Logan, what would you like to say on this topic today?
Well, I would say that intentional actions are what we should probably all be aiming for more and more throughout life, on the daily. It's certainly something that needs to be practiced, right? I don't know if any of us are born within, the ability to perform intentional actions. Most of us, I mean, the very foundations of human learning, we're copying what our elders are showing us, right? So intentional action is a more advanced form of action from that perspective, I think. But it's
Absolutely.
certainly something that can be done. And I think there are many different practices that can help one attain the ability to perform regular intention and daily repeated intentional action. And yeah, definitely when it comes to a healthy lifestyle in the modern day, intentional action is a big one for most people. Most people don't grow up with a healthy diet, exercise routine, activity levels, all these things, right? And even if you grow up with one of them, again, when we're talking about in its entirely in a holistic approach, it's all of them. So, like, who grows up with all of those in place, And that's not to say anything bad about anybody. That's more just the complex nature of the subject, right? And then you throw in the modern lifestyles, and it just makes it all the more both important to be able to perform intentional actions, but also difficult in a sense too, because we're constantly being pulled and influenced in various ways.
And so you mentioned, some specific actions we could take to start with that practice. So what recommendations would you have for maybe somebody who's starting? And I'll just give a little aside of my own experience here with what you just said. I feel like for a long period of my life, through addiction and mental health, etc., I had this feeling of being out of control, just kind of going by my urges and emotions. And, even when I did make an intentional action, I wasn't conscious that that's what I was doing. And it was usually to my harm. um, and so, yeah, now I find myself, slipping back and operating off of habit or reacting to a situation.
Absolutely. Well, I would first say that there is a level of acceptance that needs to happen when you're working on intentional action because, as previously stated, this is a practice, right? You're not going to start out having an ability to do it regularly. So it's through the process, there's going to be fallbacks, there's going to be mistakes and trips. And more importantly, in my own experience with this and developing this, there's also the potential for a phase where you're able to recognize these things now on a level you couldn't before. And this phase might come and go as you reach new levels of awareness, where you become aware of the lack of intention behind actions, but you can't yet grab them and stop them, right? So you're like, what is the matter with me? Why can't I just? And I think that's just something we need to learn to accept about ourselves and others in a sense, right? We're going to be reactive, whether or not people want to see it. The higher levels of function that we're going for in our holistic, healthy lifestyles are more difficult because they're higher functions. It involves more cognitively to do any one of these things. so you're going to slip and fall and such. And on that note, I think all of these things, whether it's intentional action, breath work, nutrition, exercise, whatever, you take them one at a time and you work on making that solid before you move to the next,
Mm.
so that when you move to the next, hopefully, as we're working on in your sessions, when you do, because we all will inevitably fall back, slip back,
Mm.
it allows us to slip back to a last milestone rather than all the way back.
Absolutely. I appreciate that comparison too. Specifically for me, in treatment and in the recovery communities, they talk a lot about, relapse prevention, and that is part of it. Almost like like a video game with like Mario with save points. You
Yup,
have a point to go back to rather than having to start from scratch.
absolutely. And in an ironic sort of way, that the need for it in such communities as recovery, addiction, all of these, also I think trauma survivors and such, is we have that I need to push, I need to push, I need to push. And yet in this area it is the exact opposite. And that can be the most difficult time during the process, is that, okay, I need to let this be what I'm focusing on, not just until I do it, but until I do it effortlessly, until I do it as part of my natural routine, which is going to take probably months, not days or weeks at most. No, no. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully for those watching, and especially those who have been watching consistently, you'll find that all these things are kind of interconnected. The small measured steps and planning and setting goals and intentional actions and all these things kind of step and build on each other. And this is a long-term commitment. I feel you will agree with that, Logan, that
This is
you
a
know,
lifelong commitment.
thank you. Yeah, this is a lifestyle.
Yeah, we're building a lifestyle here, right? Which means we're building it for life. We're not building it to say, oh, I'm gonna, do this diet or whatever for 6 months and then I'll be in shape and then I can relax and go back to no. We're making permanent, lifelong changes here,
Yeah.
which is also why it's important to work the process, to find the things that work for you and not just run the process as it's step by step on paper told to you, but to find how to work it in the way that works for you, whether that be how to control hunger pangs, or that be how to get yourself motivated for a workout, or that be how to stay focused on your healthy habits throughout your day-to-day existence. All of them are going to be your own individual, unique way to do those things.
Yeah.
And if you're approaching it in a long term, you need to respect that, or else it's not going to last. And I don't want to dedicate a lot of time to something that ain't going to last. I don't know about you. That's just who I am.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's a certain draw to it as well. I think a lot of people kind of get into this thing for a single short-term goal, to lose weight, to stop doing drugs or quit nicotine or etc. And then at least in my case, I found the value in making this a lifestyle, making a serious commitment to my health and wealth and well-being. Kind of that old saying, health is wealth. And now I'm experiencing that for the first time.
Absolutely, man. And in a literal way, that's kind of true today too, right? It might not seem it up front when you got to go and buy those healthy groceries rather than the junk food, which is probably cheaper. But in the long run, when you hit 40 until the day you die, which is only becoming longer and longer as we go through time, those years are less impacted now. There you have less expenses on healthcare, you have less concerns, you have less bills, you have all of this. And so in the lifelong, it's cheaper to take these preventative healthy steps to your lifestyle rather than the curative later on.
Yeah. And I mean, for myself and those listeners with children, and families, this is, a family decision as well. This is for my child's well-being. This is breaking the cycles that were passed down from my parents and her mother's parents, and just some of these things that were done out of ignorance or lack of information, or whatever the case may be. Um, it's kind of, I feel, my responsibility to bring these things to light and heal from them.
Absolutely, I agree with that, and I just want to really to that specifically that when it comes to changing these things because past generations taught us wrong, that doesn't have to be a shit on the past generations. Like you
Thank you.
said, a big factor is they just didn't have the information. These are young sciences we're talking about here, believe it or not. As far as even science is concerned, nutritional, exercise, even psychology, these are younger sciences than physics, than these things. Those go back to the times of Greeks. Like those are thousands of years old. We're like barely 100 in terms of these fields. So this is all ever evolving.
Yep.
Um, this is all new. It wasn't their fault that they didn't know. And in a sense, like you said, and I absolutely agree, it's a responsibility, not just as family members either, but as members of the human race, I think.
Yep.
Our we have survived this long because we adapt and evolve to what we need based on what we know. And what am a little concerned that what we know isn't even being utilized in the best ways possible anymore. So in some cases, we don't need to go into details. Some things are even suppressed. So, or confuddled with crazy, outlandish things, which, misinformation they call it now. So, again, younger fields, things are evolving quickly. Not all of it is intentional misinformation. These
Mhm.
sometimes it's just people that aren't staying as up to date as necessary. And I'm sure at some point on something, I will probably be one of them. It's a large, especially when it's both exercise science and nutrition, it's a lot to keep up with. We're going to do our best, and I believe everybody does their best. But, you know, we're going to try and continue to push ourselves and our society to healthier places
Mhm.
as human race. That is our responsibility, I think.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you kind of bringing that global perspective into it. I think that's something that's highly needed right now, is that attitude of unity in the human race. Thinking about our race as a whole, and this planet as a whole. I think it's important. I think we all, like you said, hold that responsibility to each other, and it's high time we kind of start kicking that into high gear.
Absolutely. And unity does not have to be based on hate for others either. We can just unify because we want to be unified. We want to help one another. And that's all it is here. Just to be clear, we're not shitting on any other groups. We're just here to raise us up. Not us, you and me, us, the human race. Let's do positive things. Let's make healthy, positive changes.
Yeah, that is man, this is extremely insightful. I really appreciate this talking point today for sure.
Absolutely, man. I mean, you were the originator of the concept. I'm just pushing it a little forward, like we're talking about?
What does it encompass? What is mindfulness?
Ah.
Yeah.
I think it kind of prefaces itself on this subject
Mm,
as you want to work on mindfulness and that will lead to better being able to perform intentional actions.
mhm,
They're hand in hand.
yeah. Mm. And yeah, I kind of break the word down a little, mindfulness. What am I directing the fullness of my mind to? My mind as a tool.
It is
Yeah,
directing your intentions, your mind, your
yeah,
thoughts on what you wish for it to be on, not just on for the ride.
yeah, absolutely. I picture things all the time that I'm intending on that'll get me towards my goals. What steps do I need to take? What's that gonna look like and feel like? And how's it gonna affect the people around me? What do I need to do to get there? Kind of feeding my mind and feeding the flame of what I want to grow. And yeah,
Absolutely. I do believe that our thoughts direct our actions. And so we can only act along the lines of what we've thought about, right?
mhm,
Does that mean that because you thought of it, boom, it's going to come into fruition like magic? No. But the more you think on something, the more ways you figure out that could work, the more likely it is to work.
yep,
And really, in the end, there is no secret formula, perfect answer that anyone and everyone can apply and it'll fix all their problems, right?
think that's a really big misconception in a lot of wellness paths, and even spiritual communities is this idea that we're just supposed to be supremely happy, joyful beings all the time that never feel anger or slighted or struggle. And so yeah, I appreciate you kind of bringing some realness to this.
In because there are no perfect formulas, no one answer that everybody can apply across the board. In the end, when I say this just increases the probability or the odds of something happening, that's all we are all doing here, right?
Mhm.
You can do all the perfect health things and still die of a freaking heart attack at 50. It happens. It happens. The world, real reality outside of what we can control is wilder and crazier and tends to occasionally spit out improbable things. Um, so all we can do is put the odds in our favor, as it were.
Absolutely. And so, I would put intentional thought, under the category of intentional action. Like you said, what we're thinking about is what tends to affect and shape our reality to a certain extent, and it definitely shapes the way that we interact with reality. And so, when I'm in a negative, complaining mindset, when I'm shooting my anger off at people recklessly, then yeah, of course, it's going to taint my view of things. I'm going to be angry and depressed.
Definitely.
Right.
And you're going to notice and see anger and depression in things that it's not
Yep.
even actually in because it's in you.
Yes. It's trickling down to my relationships, and
Yep.
everything. Absolutely.
Especially if on top of it, like myself, you have levels of trauma,
Hmm.
you get in certain moods and now like you could say the most supportive thing and I could take it like you're trying to fucking end my life. Um, so yeah, your perception and controlling it is incredibly important. And one of the keys there is your thoughts, which have a huge impact on your emotions.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm.
If you combine your emotions with the control of your posture and how you're presenting in both posture and facial expression, you almost have total control of your emotions,
Yeah. Absolutely.
which is wild and crazy to think about. But that's like really high levels of mindfulness and intentional action and all the things we're going to be talking about throughout.
Oh yeah, and it kind of steps into a little bit of my realm as well with hypnosis and neuro linguistic programming. It's a lot of cues come from body language, the way we hold ourselves, the way we speak about ourselves, the way we speak with others, and so yeah,
And the way we speak with ourselves,
self
which
talk.
is our thought.
And I like to,
That's all right, man.
yeah,
I just did the same goddamn thing. Um, but yeah, the actions and thoughts come together, and can either influence the emotions or be influenced by the emotions, and it is kind of a back and forth communication there.
mhm,
Kind of
absolutely,
chicken egg situation.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, they all interconnect and play off each other and feed off each other. So it's important to, weed the garden of the mind and really focus on what we're feeding it and thinking about it, all these things. So, as always, themarshallforest.com, also same name on Facebook. That's it. Hope you have a wonderful day. We appreciate you joining us.